Darkness kills, destroys the will. Find a spark, make hearts thrill. Hear the tales of time so grim. Shine a light, don't let it dim. Heather Brown downtown, bound. True crime story she's found. In the shadows, secret state. Need a light that finds the way.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Defeating the Darkness, True Crime Stories with Downtown Heather Brown. That's me, your host. I'm a former homicide and sexual assault prosecutor. And today I have with me a very, very special guest who's not only a dear friend of mine and my husband's, but he is a former FBI agent, special agent. They're very special in the FBI. Special Agent Scott Gicking, who's going to tell us a story about an embassy bombing that he responded to back in
1998.
The 1900s, 1998. And back when I was just a little schoolgirl. And anyway, yes, with us today is Scott Gicking, Special Agent Gicking. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Heather.
It is so nice to have you here. And I've been a big fan of yours since, we met. We did not meet in a bar, but there was drinking going on the night we met. If you recall, do you recall when we first met?
I know I was at your wedding.
Yes.
But I assume I met you before the wedding.
I don't think you did.
Really? Okay.
So
it was at your wedding.
Yeah. Well, my husband's not really big on social plans and such.
Or drinking, for that matter.
Or drinking.
Yeah.
But his friends like to drink. Yeah. So we have had a couple cocktails together along the way.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, we met the day I married my husband. And you and your beautiful wife, Tammy, who I love and adore. She's the most darling woman I think I know. Well, there's a bunch more, but she's up there with the top. I love her.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, you're a lucky guy.
I think so.
Yeah, she knows so. She's a special lady. So you are here today because I know we know one another socially, and because we've been friends for so long, and we played pickleball together, and we've had some really good times. Gone on a cruise together with our families.
Yeah. And
we've had some really fun times, but I don't know professionally about your career with the SWAT. So give us a little backstory. Like, what did you do before you got into the FBI?
Probably not as exciting. I think it'll shut down the conversation when I say what I did. I was a CPA. I worked for one of the big 8 accounting firms.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking? No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
But that was back in the day, to get in the FBI, they were focused on, they kind of had 3 specialty programs. It was CPAs, attorneys, and people that had that were fluent in a foreign language that was critical to the Bureau. So I came in under one of those programs.
Okay, the CPA.
The CPA.
Oh, and who told you about it? Or did you just think, like, maybe I'll be an FBI agent?
My dad was in law enforcement his whole career. I grew up watching, TV shows like the LAPD back in the day. And the name of the show kind of escapes me. Do you remember?
The guy with the big mustache, Tom Selleck?
No. Before Chips. It was Adam 12, one Adam 12.
Oh, yes.
So I used to watch Adam 12 as a kid. My dad was a cop, and I just thought it would be so cool. I'd see him dress up every day and, head out to work, and he loved his work, and I thought that's what I want to do. Which I had anticipated, okay, I'm going to finish high school, I'll go to college, you have to do that, and then I'll join law enforcement. And but when I was in college, I take that back. Let me take back one step. When I was in high school, and I think I just turned 18, I went on patrol with my dad in the LAPD. And this is back in the 80s. And it was kind of jaw-dropping to me back in the day. I'm on patrol with them. We're just BSing. We're at an intersection. He's telling jokes. All of a sudden it comes over the radio. There's a 211, armed suspect. They give the description. It's like right ahead of us. And he says, hang on, and he guns it, puts the lights on, and all of a sudden we pull up to an intersection. There was an AM, PM ARCO station. There was some activity in the area around the fire pumps. There were there were some people outside of the AM, PM, and they're waving towards my dad. My dad pulls in, stops at the pumps, and a car that was in front of the AM/PM doors guns it and then slams on the brakes and kind of stops over to my dad's right, to our right. And there was a guy in front of the AM/PM doors who was reaching under his jacket. And all of a sudden he goes and he starts to pull out a gun. And my dad tells him, freeze, and the guy's holding onto the gun, looking at my dad. My dad says, don't do it, don't do it. And you get your hands up. And these guys over on the right are yelling and screaming that, hey, he tried to kill us, blah, blah, blah. And they're, drawing my dad's attention over there. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? So finally the guy put his hands up, and all of a sudden another unit pulls in, and they go, hey, Sarge, what's going on? He goes, that guy's got a gun. Get him, get down on the ground. But he's directing them. And then they go, hey, there's just been a TA with traffic accident with a high-speed pursuit. You need to get to it. And next thing you know, we're doing lights and sirens. We're going to another location. I'm like, what the heck just happened? And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm built for this, right?
That's wild.
And my dad never remembered that night. Like, I brought it up. It was so influential in my life. And he goes, I don't remember that. I go, it was crazy. Like, this guy was getting ready to draw his gun and shoot at you. And so I thought when I was in college, I go, man, I don't know if I could be a cop and be reactive to these situations. I go, but I like law enforcement. I like the idea. Well, a buddy of mine, his dad, was president of Hilton International, of security for Hilton International. And I was talking to him, and he goes, what are you majoring in? I said, I'm majoring in business. I want to get into law enforcement, but I don't know. I don't think I'm quite cut for it. And I told him the story. And he goes, will you ever think about the FBI? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, then you wouldn't be responding to threats. You'd actively work investigations. You take down people when you want to. You're not wearing a uniform. And I was like, man, that is what I want to do.
Perfect fit.
And so that's why I pursued the Bureau. And it ended up being all that. It was great. Great career.
So tell us about that. What year did you start that in?
I started in 1988 in the Bureau. And in the wisdom of the Bureau back in the day, they believed that a key thing to do with your agents is to ensure that they were loyal to the Bureau. And a good way to do that is wherever they are recruited out of, ensure they're assigned somewhere else, which is actually a pretty good role. So you're not going back to your same family and friends around the neighborhood and now you're just carrying a badge. Now you're actually going somewhere else where you know nobody, but you're going to know people at the office. It makes you kind of loyal. It lends your loyalties to the Bureau.
Oh, I didn't understand that was the thinking behind that.
So then I just got married. I got married in the academy. So in the middle of the academy, got married. 4 weeks later, I got my assignment.
Seeing your wife? Were you already seeing Tammy?
Yeah, we'd already been dating. We were engaged, and then all of a sudden I got a date to go to the Bureau. And so we just stuck with the date for the wedding. We got married. We didn't know where we were going to live. A month later, we found out, and she flew in that night, and we got orders to Milwaukee, and I said, hey, we're going to Milwaukee. And she's like, where's Milwaukee? I go, well, it's an 8-hour drive from your grandma. She goes, I'm good. I said, okay. So we lived in Milwaukee, and that was quite an experience.
Wow, for 5 years?
For 3 years.
Okay.
And then because I was a CPA, savings and loan crisis was pretty significant in Southern California. They needed CPAs. I volunteered and got transferred back to Los Angeles Division.
Oh, okay. So
that
then
was in 92.
So you came
91, actually.
All right. And then you came out here to LA.
Yeah. Came out to LA, and then I joined the SWAT team. I was on the SWAT team in Milwaukee, smaller team, small division, small problems. Moved to LA division, big division, a lot of good work, as you say, but a lot of big problems, right, in LA division. LA division covers, I want to say, is it 5 counties? It's Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, LA, Ventura, Santa Barbara, maybe it's 7 counties, whatever it is, but it's a big territory, right? Big swath of territory. So you cover all the population in that area, all the Bureau area of responsibility. And so the SWAT team in that area would probably get some pretty good work. And so I leveraged my experience I had in Milwaukee to try out for the team in LA, and I was fortunate enough to make the team and had a lot of good experiences while on the FBI LA SWAT team. And one of them was this Africa deployment.
All right. Is that where you met Tom, my husband?
Tom and I actually, if I recall correctly, we came in on the team at the same time. We tried out at the same time, and both came on in 1992.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what does it take to be on the SWAT team?
There's a level of fitness, firearms proficiency, and competence that you have to have. And there's a standardized fit test where you have to, accomplish, speed, agility, different events. Yeah, they call it pursuit rescue climb, which is supposed to simulate you in suited armor getting over a wall, which basically is you with a 40-pound vest and loaded firearm on your shoulder doing 5 clean pull-ups. You have to do a 100-yard dash where you pick up a shotgun and you run, you're wearing a vest, and you got to do that in so much time. I forget how many seconds it was. There's other aspects of the test that you have to do. And then firearms proficiency, you have to score at least a 90 on the firearms course, and there's a laid out course. And then they run some scenarios and see how you respond to, active threats and things like that. You can keep your cool. And, I was fortunate enough to make it.
So you got to be a badass.
I don't know. You have to be, competent, proficient to a certain level that they can rely on.
All
and
right.
You have to be mature,
That's fair. That's a good thing.
Yep.
So you're on this team, and I didn't realize that the SWAT team went out to all those different locations, like Riverside. So if there's some big shootout or, something where they need the SWAT team, they call the SWAT. It takes you a couple hours to get to Riverside, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, we had in 97 was the Hollywood shootout, North Hollywood shootout. I don't know
Were
if
you at
remember
that?
one? Oh, yeah, we were there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was back in the days of pagers. And I'm in Santa Ana, the pager goes off, and we had codes we used back then, for what the matter was.
What's the code for shit's going down?
Well, I forget, it was 911. I think we had some alphanumeric back then, so I think it was. I think they put in there bank robbery, suspects, or shots fired, hostages, and then suspects, actively shooting or something like that. And so we went lights and sirens and went to LA, and that was a wild day. So I mentioned earlier, my dad was LAPD. He'd only been in one shooting his whole career, and it was at that same intersection.
You're kidding.
Yeah. I pulled up that intersection. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is the one place he'd been in a police shooting, and now all of a sudden I'm standing in brass. Like, I got, hailed in by the cops, and I'm going and unloading my SUV, and there's brass casings everywhere. And I go, I'm in the middle of a crime scene. They said, don't worry about that. Just get your stuff on, get going. Which is, in law enforcement, you never want to disrupt a crime scene, but things were that bad. So in the North Hollywood shootout, there were 2,200 rounds of ammunition fired that day.
Unbelievable.
About 1,100 rounds fired by the bad guys, 1,100 rounds fired by the good guys. 2 people died that day. 2 bad guys. That's it. It was an absolute miracle.
That's a miracle.
It was unbelievable.
That was like these 2 guys, like bank robbery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened, I don't know if your husband told you or not. A year earlier, we were on surveillance waiting for them to hit the bank.
Oh, I didn't know that. He doesn't tell me anything. That's why I brought you on here. I want to get the goods.
Well, what
Tom
happened
Brown
was-
tells me nothing.
Now, I might not be precise on these dates, but I think it was the 3rd week in March, 1996, and then the 3rd week in April, 1996. Bank of America's just off the 101, each got hit. So a month apart from each other. 2 armed subjects with fully automatic AK-47s, covered in body armor, came into the banks, fired rounds into the ceiling, and took the banks each for $750,000. So FBI paired up with the LAPD. Said, okay, that was 3rd week in March. That was 3rd week in April. Now 3rd week in May, 1996. Let's set up on all the Bank of Americas off the 101 in the Valley. Let's set up surveillance. And if we see these guys coming in to hit the bank, we'll be ready to respond, because these guys are a serious threat to life safety, right? So, T-Bone and I and the rest of the guys in the team and LAPD, we all got staged around the corner, and we had our surveillance units on all the banks. Those guys didn't hit again for like another 9 or 10 months. They didn't hit until 1997 when the North Hollywood shootout happened.
Do you think that they knew that you were setting up on them, maybe?
No.
No. Do you know why they didn't hit for 7 months?
It appears that the $1.5 million that they took
Held them over?
the course of a month, 2 months, held them over. Yeah.
Then they gambled
were fine.
away.
Yeah.
Got some strippers or blow or whatever they were doing. And
Whatever
then
they were doing.
when they ran out of money, they needed more. So
Well,
then
they did find out when they did the search warrant that these guys would watch the movie The Heat in their garage, in their staging room. They had a staging room to put on all their body armor, and they watched the movie The Heat before they went out and did the robberies. They get all pumped up.
for reals?
Yeah. You remember that movie, The Heat?
Yeah, I remember it. But I always thought that the Heat came after
Nope.
that.
No,
Like-
if I recall, it was that movie that they watched before they went out to do the robbery.
Wow. It's crazy how movies can
Influence.
influence people. Because, you know, the Hossein Nairi case, that whole caper in the desert where they,
Yeah,
he would watch Reservoir Dogs and a
that
couple.
makes sense because it's kind of a Reservoir Dog type thing
Yeah.
that he did.
And he named everybody Mr. Pink and Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
And then they also watched that one, the birds are going crazy over here. The Salma Hayek, she was like a Mexican drug lord. And,
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah, that's a good show.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't remember the name of it as I sit here today, but yeah, they had watched all these movies. People get a lot of their negative influences from movies, I think.
Yep.
So, wow. Okay. So the bank robbery. So you were involved in that one.
Yep.
And I'm assuming 1,000 other cases, right?
I mean, yeah, many other cases. You know, there were significant cases that stand out in my mind. But, you know, we had a 25-year reunion for guys on the SWAT team. And I mean, it's interesting. These guys remember all these operations. I don't even remember. They go, yeah, you were there. And I just say, I don't remember. But I remember certain ones and they don't remember them. So it's, you know.
It's a crapshoot when you get to our
it
age.
is. Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Stories get better when alcohol is involved as well. So
Right? Yeah, exactly. We're not drinking alcohol today. It's pure water.
Mm-hmm.
I have to teach tonight. Otherwise, I'd be drinking with you. We'll do a night shoot, and then you can tell
There
us
you
the
go.
real stories.
All right.
Then the real stories will come out. So you said T-Bone. Is that my husband's nickname?
that's your husband's nickname. Yeah.
What was your nickname?
You know, I don't know.
You know, you
Well,
just don't
no.
want to tell us
No, I mean, it just depended on the individuals.
what they call you.
Yeah, I mean, on the team, Gick, I think, was probably just it, just short for my last name.
Okay. And now your brother is in the FBI.
Yes.
Yeah, Chris Gicking.
He's retired now, yeah.
Yeah, and you're retired now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work with your brother. He used to handle some bank robberies. He was a great investigator.
Yep.
And I'm not picking favorites.
No,
you know,
that's okay.
of course you're my
Yeah.
favorite.
Uh-huh.
So until he's on the show. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
exactly.
You are my favorite. Okay, so tell me about
So 1998,
yes. Let's talk
so-
about that.
you know, and again, depending on who you talk to, this is the way I remember it. So, you know, when you're a member of the SWAT team in LA, it means that it is, number one, a collateral duty, which means primarily I'm a special agent investigator working my cases, but I also do this, right? And
So
try to
you're not
maintain a
just
level of
on
training.
SWAT.
I'm not 100% SWAT. Now, I was a team leader at the time, so I was probably 60% SWAT, but I still had a caseload. And that's because, you know, as a team leader, like your husband was, you're setting up training, you're involved in administration over the team. You're also responsible for, you know, incident response, for planned raids, et cetera. And so you're always in communication. So I bring that up because we were at SWAT training at the Long Beach Range. And if I recall correctly, again, I think we were on pagers back then. We got a call from FBI headquarters, and we communicated with the headquarters unit, and they wanted to know about our availability to respond to a significant event in a unspecified location for an unspecified duration. And they need to know about our availability.
You're like,
Now,
are you
what does
available
that
for
mean?
something somewhere for a
Right.
long
Now,
for
the
some
day
time?
before, 2 embassies were simultaneously bombed by what turns out later to be identified as Al-Qaida. 2 U.S. embassies were bombed in Africa within minutes of each other. And so we had a pretty good idea. This probably has something to do with the bombing, right? And then we canvassed the team. So the guys that were at training Said, hey, who here's available? In other words, you don't have a trial. You don't have like a commitment where you're not going to be able to, where you can be gone for a month, right? So whether you paid for vacation or you got kid responsibilities, whatever, who's available here for the next month, and they can be there 100% of the time and they can be available. And so there were about, I think, 20 of the 46 guys at the time that were available for the deployment. We had to canvass the team, say, all right, who's available, who can make it, okay. And then it took a couple days. We just trick them back information from FBI headquarters. They say, okay, pack your stuff. We're going to take this gear. It takes a little while to get it moving. So a couple days later, next thing you know, we're flying commercial jet to DC. And then we meet in DC. We get briefings at FBI headquarters, maybe out at Quantico. They start to let us know what we're probably going to need to bring, let us know about the location. We're paired up with like another Washington field office, their SWAT team. And then now we're taking military jet. And we need to take military jet to Germany, and then we flew into Africa. And we flew over Sudan right when the U.S. bombed Sudan under President Clinton, because they thought there was a pharmaceutical factory that was producing weapons or something like that. And the reason I bring that up, I remember the pilots said, hey, we're flying over a country that we bombed. So they were very happy because they were going to be able to get tax-free income for a year. I just remember that because the pilots love that, because if you fly over a country that we bombed, then you don't have to pay taxes.
Oh, really?
I looked it up. I was hoping that applied to DOJ, but it does not apply to the Department of Justice, only DOD. So, but that's the accountant in me, right? So we land in Africa. We land in Dar es Salaam, and we dropped off the WFO team, the Washington Field Office SWAT team. And then we continued on to Nairobi, Kenya, where we arrived there. And this is now, I'm sure it was a week after the bombing. Now, why were we there? So immediately after the bombing, both Kenya and Tanzania had very limited exposure to terrorism events, massive terrorism events like that. They didn't have the capability to respond to it forensically, to respond to it from a collective public safety standpoint. They felt overwhelmed. First thing U.S. government does when something like that happens, reach out to the host country, say, do you need any assistance? And I found this out later because I ended up working at FBI International Operations, but you offer the host country, can we help you in any way? Because it serves the U.S. interest to help out these countries so we can ensure a more safe public, right? And we can get information.
These bombings, though, were U.S.
These were U.S. embassies that were bombed. Now,
so I would think that
U.S. land, U.S. territory, but we don't have law enforcement jurisdiction in Kenya or in Tanzania, right? The FBI is a domestic law enforcement agency. We don't have any law enforcement jurisdiction. That being said, they were overwhelmed. They wanted help. The FBI says, we can send people out there. If we send people out there, will you give them the authority to operate in your country? Yes. Okay. Will you give the authority to the FBI to operate, run investigations in Kenya, in Tanzania, and can they bring firearms to protect themselves? Yes. And so we deployed.
That's unusual, isn't it?
Extremely unusual at the time. It was extremely unusual. Okay. You're talking about a field office SWAT team being deployed to a foreign country. I was walking around, Kenya for a month with a gun on my hip and a little badge, FBI badge in front of it. What is that? Who's ever seen that, right? Now, that being said, I was very thankful we could do that because when we landed there, again, it's like a week after the bombing. Well, after that bomb went off, anybody that was lightly complected was gone out of that country. So it was, and most of our team, white guys, Hispanic guys, all that, we had some black guys, but we kind of stand out when we arrive there, right? And we dress like Americans, so we stand out anyway. And somebody just attacked an American embassy. So we're kind of targets. So we did feel better that we were able to carry a firearm. You still feel exposed. You're standing out among others. You know, it's hard to have people not recognize the fact you're an FBI agent when you come into a situation like that, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I ended up
Especially
working
when you get the
closely
little
with
badge that says FBI.
Yeah. Well, I ended up working, you know, after the bomb went off, we're there a week later, and we're helping provide protection for the evidence response team as they're going through the bomb scene and then trying to collect evidence and identify how this all went off. And then we're interviewing witnesses. So I'm paired up with the Kenyan Federal Police.
Interpreter,
I'm going
right?
out doing, they say speak English. They learn English in school. They all speak 3 languages. It's pretty interesting. Their tribal language, Tagala, I think, and English. And so you're out doing investigations with them, but everybody knows who you are when you're there paired up with the African representative or law enforcement official.
How many people were killed in those bombings?
225 people were killed in Nairobi, 12 of those Americans. But more importantly, I think, and I shouldn't say more importantly, but more substantially, 5,000 people were injured. So when the bomb went off, before the bomb went off in Nairobi, the bad guys threw a grenade at the embassy. And this is a downtown area. Everybody looks towards where the blast of the grenade was, and then the bomb went off. And so a lot of people were blinded from flying glass from all the buildings.
Oh my gosh.
So a lot of people were injured.
I had no idea. That's terrible.
So it was at the time, there was no World Trade Center that had happened. So at the time, it was very, very significant.
Yeah,
for that
pre
number of
9/11.
people.
It wasn't like today's day and age where you hear about bombings all the time or some terrorist activity or shooting.
And this was, as we determined as we were working our investigation there, it was Al Qaida. And there was, an individual who headed up Al Qaida that made a fatwa earlier that year.
A what?
A fatwa.
What's a fatwa?
Which was calling on Muslims to come forward and fight for their religion. And that was Osama bin Laden. He said it's an obligation of all Muslims to fight for Islam and to come out and defeat any of the Western people, and you can use any means of doing so. And so this was the first action he did after the fatwa to substantially hit the Western world.
Unbelievable. So Osama bin Laden was behind the whole thing.
Yes.
As the head of Al Qaeda.
Yes. And before that really wasn't on our radar, at least certainly not to that extent. And what happened was there was an individual who reported to him that was responsible for the operations there that we had identified after being there for a couple weeks. And it turns out he had stayed in Nairobi for a week after the blast, and then he went back to where he was from, Comoros. And we became aware of that information as we're conducting our investigation. And so we ended up going there. But before I get there, I want to talk about what happened was when we were working the investigation, we're interviewing witnesses, et cetera, all of a sudden a call came into the embassy annex. So the U.S. embassy obviously didn't exist anymore. It had been blown to smithereens, so we were operating out of the annex. So a telephone call came into the annex, and they said, hey, we think we know where one of the bombers is. He's injured, and we don't want you to tell the Kenyan authorities, but you, FBI, you need to come and pick this guy up. Well, when you operate at the pleasure of the host country, you're supposed to share everything with them before you do anything. So now they had a situation like, hold it, we're being told not to tell the Kenyan authorities they don't trust them. So now, and do we go and meet these people, or are we being set up? Because you got to remember, they were killing Americans.
That was the first thing I thought. This is a setup, don't go.
This is a setup. So, but what ends up happening is we end up sending some people there to meet, the informant, and they point out a guy that's been held up in an apartment that seems to be injured. He's been setting up there. He's bleeding. He won't get medical attention. And so we end up going in and getting the guy, bringing him back to the embassy, and interviewing him. And he eventually confessed to backing out last minute. He was in the truck that delivered the bomb, and he was there for when the grenade went off, and then he ran around the corner of the building when the bomb went off. And so he survived. Now, we worked up a pretty good case on him. We captured somebody else. that was involved. And the Attorney General of the United States said, you need to get this guy back to the U.S. so he can be prosecuted. So we arranged for transportation for him to be picked up in Nairobi National Airport, like in the middle of the night. We took him to the airport. He got flown out. And because we had to keep the Kenyan authorities briefed on everything, we briefed them that morning that the subject that we got all this information from, he's now being transported to the U.S. and he's going to be prosecuted there. Now, when we work with the authorities there, we say, everybody keep this quiet. You can't tell anybody. Within 15, 20 minutes, it's on the news in Kenya. And they're announcing that the FBI took one of the bombers and they're prosecuting him in the U.S. Well, now the public is upset because this guy had killed Kenyans.
They
Why
want
do we
their
let him to
justice.
the U.S.? And then we're like, well, hold on, we got this other guy. So now we got to hurry up and get this other guy out before they tell us we can't take this other guy. So we had to scramble in to get that guy out and send one of the guys on my team had to go and do a rendition. So a rendition is when you, it's the formal process of removing some individual and taking him from one country to another. And there's all sorts of protections that go with it. You got to, medically, you have a doctor check him out before they go, take pictures of everything, and then take pictures of him when he lands so he wasn't abused. He's not being arrested, he's being, transported. It's a rendition. So that individual is taken over. Then we developed that additional information on the coordinator, right? Harun Fazul Muhammad. So he was in Comoros, which was where he's from, and we found out that he flew back there like a week after the bombing.
This isn't the injured guy?
This is not the injured guy.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry,
no, I wasn't. It was
so
me. I wasn't
the injured guy was the first guy we had sent back to New York.
That
for
was all over the news.
Yeah,
and
it was all over the news.
Did the Kenyans stop you at all, or they weren't?
No,
able
that guy was already gone. And then we hurried up and got the other guy out before they made us think about it.
Gotcha.
And then now our next guy was this guy in Comoros. So now we, share information with the FBI headquarters that this subject has been identified. We believe he's in Comoros. We can identify a flight. He went back there, a week earlier probably, because now we're a couple weeks out. Maybe it was 3 weeks. He might have been gone a couple weeks. And but in any case, we saw that he flew to Comoros, and we think he's the coordinator that, according to the guys we interrogated, he coordinated everything to get these guys to deploy the bombs, right? He helped assemble all the material that was needed for the bomb, set up the vehicle, get these guys all committed, and he controlled them. So now we had to see about getting to Comoros. Now, I say we had to see about getting to Comoros. We, the Bureau. Now, we share with the Bureau, hey, we identify this guy. Here's the information we got. And they said, okay, come up with a plan. We go, what do you mean? Come up with a plan on how you can go to Comoros and get the guy. I'm like,
you're the Bureau. You're supposed to go up with the plan.
Well, no, yeah, I'm like, FBI headquarters, you need to send HRT. So HRT is the hostage rescue team. They're the elite FBI team. They train with special forces. They train with Delta. They train with SEALs. They train with SAS, but they're law enforcement. So that allows them a high degree of capability, and they can also testify. So there's a problem with special forces is they don't testify to what they do. So when it's a law enforcement function, you want to make sure you have somebody's doing it that can competent and pull it off, that can testify. And so you have HRT. So we're thinking, well, this is an HRT mission. It's not a field office SWAT team. We were here initially just to protect the people here in Kenya while they search through evidence and, help out some locals, do some interviews, but we're not going to go nab some guy in some foreign country. Comoros. I'd never heard of Comoros.
Is it an island? Is it a country?
Yeah, it's an island country.
Oh, both.
So it turns out in 1976, it used to be a French colony. The French gave it up, and now it was an independent country. And as we looked into it further, we found out that 6 weeks earlier, there was a coup in Comoros, and now there's new people that are leading it. And our State Department said that we don't have any recognized leaders of that country that we can speak to. We don't have any formal relations with this country, because that's generally what we would do to get into a country. We would go to State Department and say, hey, can you facilitate us coming there to help out this country? Well, there was no formal relations with Comoros. So we're thinking HRT is going to take the mission. HRT says they don't have the bandwidth. They're spread too thin. And they said, you need to come up with a plan on how you're going to go to Comoros and get this guy. I'm like, what? So, we're a field office SWAT team. We're used to doing search warrants, arrest warrants, in Southern California, looking for kidnappers, bank robbers, murderers, stuff like that stuff, right? But not a terrorist in a foreign country. Like we know our area of responsibility. This is a country I've never heard of.
Right.
Right?
You had to Google it. They didn't even have Google back then.
Well, I'm not sure what we had. We had the ability to look on the internet, and I think it was Google, but it was very limited in 1998. And what we had to do is we said, well, we're going to put together a five paragraph operations order, just like we do with any other raid, where you talk about the situation, mission, execution, administration, command, and control. How are we going to do this? What do we need to do? How's it going to be administered? All that different stuff, right? So we start to look into Comoros, the country, do the research with the State Department, look at the weather, look at the diseases, look at the hospital facilities, look at the infrastructure, find out this island nation has one paved road from one end of the island to the other, has no running water, no electricity. People live in grass huts or cinder block homes. They get their water from a lake in the middle of the island that they carry their Home Depot bucket, fill it up with water, and they walk it back to their village. I mean, extremely primitive, right? So then we had to come up with, well, how are we going to get there?
Now, this is a dumb question, but as you're saying
No
this,
questions are dumb on this thing. It's because this is all new to us.
Okay, so
We had nothing but questions.
right, and I'm gonna guess like when you get there, however you get there, like, do they have an airport there?
They did.
Okay, you weren't like taking
Yep.
a rowboat or anything, right?
No.
There was an airport. Did they have internet service?
I
mean, they don't have running water. I'm guessing internet.
They did have some limited internet, I think through satellite or something like that.
Because I'm wondering, how are you, when you're there, getting the support that you would need to pull off some
Satellite phones, stuff like that.
Okay.
So we had satellite phones.
Okay.
So, but what happened was we had to come up with our plan. We had to come up with our medical evac. What are we going to do if there's a medical emergency while we're there? Because there really was no hospital there. So we ended up bringing a doctor. So we had an FBI agent.
Good thinking.
Who was a doctor.
Who came up with that idea?
Who was an ER doc.
Oh, you had
at
an agent.
UCLA, and he decided he wanted to be an FBI agent. And he maintained his training, and so we brought the doctor on the trip.
Was he already in Africa
He was
with you?
already in Africa with us.
Okay, good thinking. You
and
got a
then
CPA,
we-
a doctor.
Yeah, so then we put him in the operations order. But what was interesting is, so we put together the plan, and we're thinking like, there's no way the critical incident response group, who's in charge of HRT, and they're in charge of all SWAT teams, that they're going to approve this. A field SWAT team going to execute an arrest warrant in a foreign country where we have no relations. But we put together the plan, and fortunately the commander of our team, Doug Kane, he was former HRT, so very experienced, very talented guy. He knows like all the questions to ask, all the questions to answer. He knows how to push things through. And he goes, there's no way in hell the field office SWAT team is going to get this operation, but let's go ahead and put together an order. I said, okay. So we put together an operations order. Now, usually an operations order, it's going to be 5, 6, 8 pages. We go into go to hit a place to take out a suspect. And I say take out, remove them from the residence, take them for prosecution. So what happens is we put together this thing, we got to put in the geography, the medical evac, the administration and control, communications, what is the mission, how are we going to execute it. It ends up being 75 pages. We're working on this thing night and day. We put together the operations order. It's 75 pages. And we're like, because we got to answer all contingencies, right? So we're like, there's no way CERG, C-R-I-G, is gonna approve this. CERG tells us, hey, it's been approved. It's at the director's desk. We're like, holy crap, this is going by the director of the FBI. Oh, crap, okay.
Who was the director at that time?
So it was Louis Free. Oh. So then we get word the director passed it to the AG. So he passed it to the Attorney General.
Who was that, Reno at the time?
It was Janet Reno. Very good. We're like, well, there's no way Janet Reno's going to approve it. Like, she went through Waco and all that stuff. Like, there's no way they're going to let like a field office SWAT team go to like some foreign country. So then we come back, we get another update. You're never going to believe it. I go, what? They approve it? And they go, no, it went to POTUS. So she sent it to the president of the United States.
Wow.
So now we're sitting there going like, hold it. This 75-page report that Doug and I worked on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now it's being scrutinized at the highest level. Like, man, I wish I had more time to review that. But you had to put it together really quick, right? So we're like, well, there's no way Clinton's going to approve this thing, right? He ends up approving it. And then we're like, how are we going to? They go, it got approved. Now they're just trying to find you transportation. And I was like, what?
Because you have to get from
crazy.
Africa.
So we got to get from Eastern Africa to Comoros. So Comoros, to get to your question, is there an airport? There is an airport. There's an airport that has one scheduled flight a week. And then they have some private flights. And it is a paved runway. And so now we got to figure out how are we going to land a government assets that's going to get there into this little airport. It's a little airport. So it can't be a big jet. So they're trying to figure out, hey, they're trying to find us transportation. Hey, they found something. It'll pick you up tonight at 2 a.m. at Nairobi National Airport. And we're like, okay. Like, let's pack up our stuff. Let's go. And they say, hey, leave behind your raid jackets. Like, what? Leave behind your raid jackets. Okay. We're not black ops. But it didn't look good. It wouldn't look good. If people had pictures, whatever. I don't know. So we're not packing our raid jackets. We're taking ammunition. We're taking our guns. We're taking all the stuff we take.
But they want you like plain clothes? Like, no. Because didn't you guys wear like
well, we still wore, yeah. Like,
the black jumpsuits?
Black jumpsuits.
Those are kind of sexy for the record.
Yeah. Okay.
I only saw my husband in it once, and I was like, what is that little outfit? He didn't like me calling it, by the way.
Little outfit.
He goes, it's not an outfit.
Yeah.
But it was sexy. I'm not
Uniform.
going to lie.
All right. So what ends up happening is we get approval. They're looking for the air asset. They tell us 2 a.m., meet at the airport. So now they said it's going to be 2 flights because we need to get the team of 20. We need to do over 2 flights. So it turns out it's a G4, a Gulfstream 4. So they tell us very specifically, you can take any pictures of it. When it lands, you need to get on it, and they need to go dump off the first load, and then they'll come back and pick up a second load and then take you guys there. So the commander, he took the first team of 10 guys. And I say 10, I think there were 18. There were 9 of us, plus they had the flight crew, which was 3 guys in there. So I think there were 12 people on the flight. So it arrives at 2 a.m. So part of our operations order, we had to put in there what we were going to do to ensure the cooperation of the local authorities, right? So the idea was we'd land there, we'd let them know about what we know, we're looking for their help, could they assist us, hat in hand, what can you do for us? And then if all goes well, we'd like to compensate them for helping us, right? So we put in the operations order, we wanted to bring $50,000 US to be able to grease the skids for anybody that would help us, get the stuff done. Because they're going to have to get vehicles. They're going to have to, they're going to incur some costs. So we arrived at the airport at 2 a.m. We had short notice before the plane was coming. We asked the ambassador to get 50 grand out of the safe. And the ambassador was working on it, but the ambassador hadn't got it yet. So the plane arrives, 2 a.m. We load all our gear on it. And they say, okay, we got to go. I said, well, we got to wait. We're still waiting for the money to show up. Now, these are guys from the OGA.
What's that?
The other government agency.
Okay.
That
Is that covert for CIA or something?
Pretty much.
Okay.
And so we don't know their last names. We don't, these are guys that arrive in a jet in the middle of the night.
Is that the lingo? OGA means like?
Yeah, because you don't have to state anything on there. So we just refer to them as the OGA.
Okay.
And so I say, hey, I'm waiting on money coming from the embassy. We got to have it for arriving. They go, well, will you have it by the time I come back to pick you guys up? I said, yeah. He goes, well, I can probably spot you the money. I go, well, I need 50 grand. He goes, yeah, we got it. So they arrive in this jet in the middle of the night. They already got 50 grand on board. I was like, holy crap, these guys are for real.
For real, like in the movies. Did you feel like you were
unbelievable? I felt like it was a movie.
You have like a super cool, badass job, right? You're FBI. You're on the SWAT team. You're already like
these guys are flying around with all this money.
You're already in a movie, and now you're like in super like primetime movie, right? You're like flying on a Gulfstream Gulfstream 4. CIA's giving you 50 G's in a bag.
So they take
What kind
the
of bag
first-
did they have it in?
Oh, I don't remember. So then we got you covered. So they fly the first crew in, and then they come back, and it's probably because it's the turnaround time. By the way, Comoros is a small island nation, and if you're familiar with Southern California and Catalina Island,
Yes.
it is approximately the same size as Catalina Island.
Oh, wow. You can
it's
get
26 miles long, 2 miles wide at the widest point. So it's basically the same. I kept thinking about it. It's basically Catalina. Now it's a tropical island. It's very primitive, but it's between Madagascar and the continent of Africa. So if you know Africa, on the eastern side of Africa, there's a big island set off there. That's Madagascar. But there's a little island nation called Comoros. It's somewhere in between. So if I recall correctly, it's like a 3-hour turnaround flight, maybe 3 or 4 hours. In any case, I think they came back to Nairobi National Airport about 5 a.m., picked up me and my team. I gave them the $50K, so now they had their money back. And then we flew into Comoros. Now we're arriving in Comoros. Now it's morning. The sun's up. Our friends arrived there in the middle of the night. We land on the airport and stop, outside the main terminal. The main terminal is like one room, right? And all of a sudden, these guys come out of the tower and they got long guns and they surround our plane, the jet that we're on. And I'm like, what's going on here? Where's our team?
Right.
They were supposed to be here to greet us.
Yeah, they're not here, and we're being greeted by men with
long guns, right? So were
you shitting?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. We lower the stairs down on the G4, and all of a sudden this guy in a robe, clearly like the guy in charge or something, he walks out of the building and he walks down to the base of the stairs, and he says, "Welcome," and he says, "I need your passports," and I'm like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "We had our passports." So I go back up into the plane. I tell the team, I go, "Guys, I need your passports." They go, "What do you mean?" I go, "The guy down there says he needs our passports. We're arriving in his country. Give me your passports." And he goes, "Are you sure?" I go, "It's their country. Yeah, just give me your passports." So I go down, hand him the passports. He goes walking away. And then one of the armed guys starts messing with the luggage compartment at the back of the jet. And one of the guys in the team comes up to me. He says, "Hey, he can't get back there in that cargo compartment. That's where our long guns are." I go, I know. Let me just, tell him to hold off. So, I put out my hand. I tell him, no, wait. And he doesn't speak English and I don't speak French, turns out. So it was kind of a standoff. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and he's not pulling down the luggage, but he's not moving away from it. And then I always remember one of the guys in the team, he says, "Hey, if you need to, I could take that guy out." I go, "Don't worry about it, Art. We're good." And all of a sudden this car pulls into the airport and pulls in pretty fast, stops, and a lady gets out of it and she says, "I'm from the French embassy." And I'm like, "Well, okay.
What are you doing here?
What does that mean?" And she goes, "I have your friends. They're with us. I'll take you to them." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." And then she starts speaking to these guys. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, another truck pulls up. We get all our gear. We get in there, and then we get transported to where their government is, if you will.
Oh,
right?
Were you like, "Phew, thank God we're not getting shot today"?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know what was going to happen.
No.
But it was good timing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen. So, they give us back our passports. We go to the government offices.
Did you get your guns?
Yeah. We had our sidearms, and then we got the bags. They're all with us. So then we show up at their attorney general's office and their Department of Defense. So it's basically all their government, which is basically just a couple little buildings in the middle of this village. And the team commander's there, Doug, and he says, "Hey, I'm glad you made it."
So your friends are alive.
Yeah, I'm like, "Okay, God, these guys are alive." I'm worried.
At any point, though, when you're driving with this, was the lady in the car with you?
She was in the other car. I might have hopped in with her while the team was in the truck, so yeah.
Okay. Were you at any point thinking like we could be taken to get thrown in a ditch?
Her story seemed pretty believable. She's like, I've been with Doug. We were setting up a meeting, but it all had a lot of credibility.
Okay.
We were pretty good with it. But there was that hesitation when we landed. Like, where's our team? What's going on? Why are we being surrounded by guns? Yeah, we were worried.
Yeah, and where are they
we had no
taking
communications,
us?
right?
Give us your passports, and
Yeah,
you could,
yeah.
in theory, like you don't
It could
know,
have went sideways.
could have went, yeah, you could have like never been
Mm-hmm.
seen again.
I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but okay.
She'll be like, "Oh my God, I had no idea you were in such danger."
So then we meet with the officials, right? Now that meant Doug and I walking into this room, and there was their head of military defense, which is, you know, a guy. It's a little island. Their attorney general, another guy, and then a linguist, you know, as a translator. So we explained that we're from America, and they're like, yeah, we know.
Obvious.
They go, well, there was an attack on 2 American embassies in Africa a few weeks ago. You know, you might have heard about. They're nodding. Yeah, they know. You know, everybody knows what happened, type thing. And he says, well, we have some information to indicate that the coordinator for this attack was somebody that lives here on the island, and his name is so-and-so, and we understand he lives in this village, and we want to go and try to apprehend him, you know? And the attorney general said, through the translator, we understand what you're asking for, and you have authorities to execute your search warrants in our country.
Oh.
That was it.
Was
Like,
it?
I know you're thinking, where's the evidence? That was it. Like, American voice carries a lot of weight with it. Mm-hmm. They weren't asking for the details. They were like, yeah, we'll help you out. And they said, our military will go in and secure the village, and then the law enforcement will go in and search the building, and then you guys can come in and take custody of the subject. I said, okay. So, you know, Doug said, let's do some rehearsals. So we did some stage rehearsals, like, okay, if we're going to drive into the village, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to go. And we tried to do rehearsals. They speak a form of French that the French don't even understand. We, you know, can't speak to them, but we tried to rehearse as much as we could. Then we loaded up the vehicles, and we went down that one paved road in the island, and then turned off and went into this little village. And then, military got out, put guns out.
I forgot. Did you pay them off?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No.
We're not going too far.
No,
Okay.
please.
So they get out, they secure the village, and then it turns out the subject's house it's surrounded by a cinder block wall and a cast iron gate.
Oh.
Right? And so the law enforcement, the sergeant in charge of the law enforcement group, which I've been training with, he's with his team, and they run up to the gate, and he waves me forward, and I go up to him, and he goes, okay, you go in now. I go, weren't you guys going to go in? He goes, no, you have better guns, you go. And so I turn back to my team, I go, come on, guys, we're going in. They're like, oh, yeah. So, you know, we breached the gate, we went in. Unfortunately, it was empty. But we went in, hit the house, cleared it, and then we started searching, because we had search and arrest authority. So as we are searching through the house, we identify a stack of passports that were the suicide bombers. So what happened was the coordinator grabbed everybody's passport, took them from them before they committed, the act, and brought those passports back to his house.
Unbelievable.
And so we collected those. We collected other things. While we're in there, and we had a photo of the suspect. And again, the place is surrounded by the Department of Defense for that country. And then law enforcement is inside the interior. And all of a sudden this guy walks into the bedroom while I'm in there, and he looks just like the subject, but like a year or two younger. And I'm like, hold it. And I put my gun on my hip, or I got my hand on my hip where my gun is, and I hold my hand up. I said, hold it. Who are you? He says, oh, I'm, he says the same name, but a different first name. And I would get your hands up. And he said, okay. And I turn around, and I search him, and he's clean. And I said, do you know Harun Fazul Muhammad? He goes, yeah, it's my brother. And this guy speaks perfect English.
I was just about to ask you that.
He went to the American University in Nairobi, educated there. And so I'm talking to him, and he had this look in his eye like, you dirty American, like he clearly had hate in his eyes. you know, and he just wanted to barely answer my questions. And, you know, he couldn't tell me where his brother was, when he'd last been there, anything, right? And then, you know, I asked him, when was the last time you've been in Nairobi? He goes, I haven't been there in a couple of years. Well, I saw on his passport, he was there like 6 weeks earlier. And I said, really? I said, okay, turn around. And I threw the handcuffs on him. And I turned to the sergeant. I said, we're taking this guy in custody. And he goes, you know, why? I said, well, he lied to me. You know, he said he hasn't been in Nairobi, you know, in a couple of years, but I know he was just there. So we need to talk to him some more. He goes, okay. You know, I'm saying like through a translator. You know, it's broken English, but he eventually figured it out. So now we're still searching, right? And we're trying to, you know, in the FBI, when you do a search warrant, you document everything. You take pictures of everything. You do it very thoroughly because it's going to be tested later in court. You want to make sure it's all being done right. So we're taking quite a while. So the guy on the perimeter from my team that's responsible for our interface with Department of Defense, with their military, says, hey, Scotty, how much longer? I said, 15, 20 minutes. He reaches out another half hour later. He says, how much longer? I go, 15, 20 minutes. He goes, you got to speed it up. Then he reaches out again. And he goes, you need to come out now. This is Billy. Yeah. He says, you need to come out now. And I'm like, what? He goes, you need to come out now. So I turned to the evidence response team people that are documenting all this stuff. I said, put all that stuff in a brown paper bag. Take pictures of what we got right here. We are leaving here in 1 minute. And they said, what? And I said, just grab it all. Throw it all in a bag. We're leaving now. And so I grabbed the subject's brother. I grab him. We got the evidence response team. We got the agents that are helping me there. And we go out and we come outside the cinder block wall. The natives are going crazy. Now I say natives because like these are people that are native to that area. Like some of them wearing grass skirts, like very primitive. Mm-hmm. And they're all villagers. Yelling and screaming and hooting and all this and that. And they're all pissed off. And they're looking at me holding on to one of their guys and they're yelling and screaming. And the sergeant's waving me over to the car. I go and put this guy in the back seat of the car, run around to the other side. Our other team gets in the other cars and the crowd converges on our car. And they start banging on the windows and banging on all this and that. And I told the driver, drive. And they go, what? I go, drive. And he drove right into the crowd. Like it's parting of the ways. They're all getting out of the way as a car takes off. Uh-huh. And we got out of there. And we just barely got out of there.
Oh my heavens.
I don't know what they were going to. I found out later from Billy, the reason he was telling me you need to come out now, he said that the military told him that the villagers are getting together their weapons and they're coming back to try to fight us so they can get in there and save their villager. And I was like, you got to be kidding. Well, it turns out their weapons were going to be like arrows and rocks and all this stuff.
Oh, you could have gotten shot with an arrow.
Yeah, I guess. But so we shot out of there. So we get out of there. We get back to the Department of Defense facility, and we bring them all the evidence. So you got to remember. So we're operating under their authority. So this evidence, we hand them the evidence. We said, this is what we seized. And by the way, this is Harun Fazul Muhammad's brother. He lied to me. We need to find out further information on him. He's been in Nairobi the past month, And they go, okay. And so the next morning, we want to fly out. And so we go to meet with them and we say, hey, we're going to want to collect the evidence to take back to America, tomorrow. I said, okay. So we show up the next day and the Attorney General says, I hope you found our assistance helpful. We wish we could do more for you, but, we don't have computers. We don't have this. We don't have that. We don't have a lot of equipment. We said, we really appreciate all you did, and they said, well, is there anything further we can do? I said, yeah, if you can find Harun Fazul Muhammad for us, he lives here on the island, or let us know when he comes, that'd be great. And, whatever you can find out from his brother. They go, we'll find out the information. And I'm like, okay. And they go, well, we want to thank you for, the services you provide. All the people that you helped us with yesterday, the vehicles, all this and that. Here's $50,000 US. We want to compensate you for, for the efforts your country did to help us in our assistance with this investigation. They said, oh, great. They said, we really need that evidence. They go, well, what more could we do for you? So, well, again, we're looking for Fazul Muhammad. Well, if we got him, what would it be worth to you? So Doug, he doesn't remember this today, but I remember it absolutely. He goes, how would a couple $1 million be? And they go, oh, that'd be great. And they handed all the evidence to us. And then we took the evidence, we brought it back to the US. So what happened was I'll fast forward. So when we land back at Andrews Air Force Base, 1 a.m, it's raining. We've been flying for who knows how long, the military cargo jet.
You just made it out of the village alive.
Yeah, we got out, back to Nairobi and then back to US. So now we're at Andrews Air Force Base outside of DC. 1 a.m, a bus pulls up at the base of our C-141 cargo jet. And we all get in the bus and it drives us into the presidential hangar. So we look and there's Air Force One. There's these other jets that have the presidential seal on them. We go, man, this is pretty cool. The door opens up on the bus and there's Janet Reno. 1 a.m, soaking rain. She is there to greet us as we come back onto U.S. soil.
Oh, God bless her.
And
that warms my heart.
So Doug knew her from way back when he was on HRT. So he's the first to leave the bus. I'm right over his shoulder. And he says, oh, Miss Reno, we had to go to Comoros to look. She goes, oh, I'm familiar with that, Doug. She approved the operations order, right? And he says, well, we gave money to the authorities for helping us out, but we kind of promised them a reward if they captured Harun Fazul Muhammad. And she goes, really? He goes, yeah, I told him we'd give him like $2 million. And she goes, okay. That day she had a press conference to announce the reward for their capture of Harun Fazul Muhammad, $2 million. And they were upping Osama bin Laden's reward to $2 million.
No way. Just from you guys, how's like a $1 or $2 million sound?
That was it. Is that unbelievable?
That's unbelievable.
Classic.
Oh my God, I love that story.
Yeah. So it was a fun experience. Like I say, it was very unique.
I'll say,
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened before. And
No.
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How come the CIA didn't go get them?
Remember, their responsibility is intelligence, not law enforcement.
Oh, okay. They're not the brute. They're not the guys with the
They
long
gather
guns.
intelligence to assist the U.S.
Well, in the movies,
further
they're
into the
whacking
US.
people left and right.
Well, that might be part of, what they need to do. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't a CIA. But, they have to gather intelligence for the U.S. This is prosecution. So they're not going to prosecute somebody.
Got you.
We're trying to gather them up and get them prosecuted in a court of law.
Did they ever get the guy?
13 years later, Harun Fazul Muhammad, while in Somalia, came up to a guard post, which he thought was his people. Turns out it was the enemy, and he died in a shootout.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
a
it was
great
like
little story.
2011, he ended up dying of a shootout. He was still part of Al-Qaeda. He was still very wanted at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, that's a fascinating story. I love that story.
It was very unique.
Yeah, I'll say. Oh, well, God bless you for being willing to go do that. Does Tammy know this story?
I don't know.
Not the little nitty
Maybe
gritty.
pieces. I don't know.
Yeah, you FBI agents are so tight-lipped when it comes to telling the juicy stories at home.
Yeah. It's just
It's another day of work.
Just the fun that we get to do.
Flew over on a Gulfstream to another foreign country where I didn't speak the language. There was no running water and got attacked by some villagers and escaped by the hair on my chinny chin chin.
But I don't know if that's
Just another
true.
little day at the
I don't
office.
know if that's true. I don't know what would have happened. Get hit with some sticks maybe or something.
You don't know. You could
Who
have.
knows?
You could have got one of those poison darts to the
Yeah.
neck like on Tarzan or something, right? You never know, right? I'm sure they used to have those. That'd have been imagine Tammy telling that story.
We did our research. I
My
didn't see
husband
that
got-
going on with that village, hopefully.
No.
That didn't exist.
The poison darts wasn't
Yeah.
in the Wikipedia page on it. How funny. Oh my gosh. I love that story. All right. Well, so then you retired, right? Like I'm sure you had 1,000 more cases and
Yeah, that was
that's a big.
1998. I didn't retire until 2015, so another 17 years after that.
All right. And are
retired.
you doing fun stuff now besides playing pickleball? Whooping on the Browns' ass in
I actually
pickleball?
do cybersecurity stuff now and some physical security.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So you're still out there running around keeping people safe?
in my own way, I guess. Not nearly as fun as it was in the younger days.
Right. Do you miss
But
it?
it's a younger man's game. Yeah, I do. I miss it a lot. But, it's a younger people's game,
Yeah.
right? And, SWAT, countless nights, you're out all night, or you're getting up at 1 a.m. so you can do an early morning raid and, you know, a really tough neighborhood at 4 a.m. or whatever, you know. Yeah, I'm not young anymore. I'm not built for that. I like my sleep.
Yeah, I hear you. Trust me.
And, you know, my response times aren't what they used to be, right? Mm-hmm. And as my wife will point out, I'm not 20 anymore. So, you know.
You're not 20, it's like mid-30s. I love that. Okay, so have you ever been shot at?
Shot at? I mean, never. It was never that close, really. I mean, like, no, not. I was within minutes of being, but because I moved my position, I wasn't hit.
Okay,
so that was good.
That kind of sounds like being shot at.
I wasn't there anymore. You know, they shot through a door, and I'd been in that position for quite a period of time, and then I moved, and then they shot through and shot right at that position. But
well, timing's everything, right? Isn't that the moral of the story?
Yep.
Wow, this is fascinating. I love that story. That was a great story.
It was the whole time we're pinching ourselves, going, "Is this really going to happen? Are we really going to do this?" And then, as we're doing it, we're like, "Is this really going on?" But it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. You know, my whole time in the Bureau, I loved it. It was a great experience. You know, as I tell people, if I could have paid to have the job, I probably would have done it, you know, and I actually got a paycheck instead. They paid me, you know.
That's to do a job you love. That's how I felt about the DA's office.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think you're amazing. Will you come back and tell us some more stories when we have more time?
Sure.
You got more stories in you?
Probably a few, but that was a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
I love that story. All right. Well, gosh, we're out of time, but I was fascinated with that story. I was hanging on your every word. I want to thank you for your service.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
If we didn't have people like you out there fighting the good fight, willing to risk your life, right, and take time away from your family and your children to go and try to keep our, you know, country safe, like, where would we be? It would be, you know, anarchy and chaos and destruction.
But I love to do it just like you did. You know, to do your part, try to make a difference. You know, every day trying to make, as corny as it sounds, you know, America a better place.
Amen. Amen. That's what it's all about, right? Like, we all have to, you know, it takes a village, right, to keep our people and our country safe and all our loved ones safe so that we can enjoy the good times and, you know, have fun with one another and, you know, just watch our children flourish and all that. It takes good people like yourself and my husband who are willing to do that and put themselves in harm's way for the safety of other people. And I don't want to be shot at. So God bless you for doing it. And thank you. And I'm glad you came home safe. And thank you, Janet Reno, right, for having the balls to approve that.
And Clinton, right. And that was for them to sign off on something like that at that time. We thought there's no way they're going to approve that. And they did. You know, they really put it out there and they wanted to do it to help keep America safe, you know?
I love that.
And it was the right decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks for coming on the show. And, you know,
thanks for putting out the word.
Yeah. And being a light in the darkness.
Yeah.
Right. Like we got to stand up against these terrorists and all these other people that want to, you know, place anyone in harm's way. So, all right. Well, we're out of time. That's a wrap, but I'm definitely going to have Scott Gicking back. And maybe next time when he's back, I'll tell a funny story about Scott and Bob Hunt, my husband, Tom. It's a funny one.
Oh, yeah. Tom's.
We'll have to leave that as a cliffhanger.
All right.
All right. We're out of time. So that's a wrap. Well, until we meet again, if you can't find the light, be the light like Scott Gicking. And we'll see you next time.
Be the light, shine so bright. Turn the wrongs, make them right. In the night, battles fight. Be the light, shine so bright.